Good morning, Morai B'Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Makkot, and we are on the bottom of Daf Bet Amud Bet, 12 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned L'Zchut Refuah Shlema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, Yael Bat Loren Esther Shoshana, and also specifically dedicated to the situation of this Bachur, a learning Ben Torah that unfortunately has been trialed and sentenced, Rahman Litzlan, to be executed in Iran, which is, the sentencing has been for tomorrow. We have Rachamei Shamayim that he should be saved, and the decree should be reversed for Tovah, for Bracha. Amen. Okay, we are going to just review a quick minute from the beginning of the Mishnah. Our Mishnah, which we're going to finish today, starts about the four exceptions, two of which the Mishnah mentioned, two of which we learned in the Braita, exception to the general rule. General rule being that Edim Zomemim get punished, the exact punishment they intended to inflict the person they testified against. And we have two cases in the Mishnah that's not going to happen. They're not going to get the same punishment. They're just going to get a set of malkut, a set of lashes. What are those two cases? If they try to disqualify a Kohen by testifying falsely that his mother was a divorcee, which we know if a Kohen marries a divorcee, all the children will be halalim, will technically, halachically be non-Kohanim, will be just regular Jews. So in that case, even if the witnesses are Kohanim themselves, they don't get disqualified because of a technicality that we mentioned. The pasuk says, Lo velo le'zar'o. You have to only punish him, but you can't inflict punishment on his children. If you make somebody a halal, his children become halalim as well. And the second case would be that they don't go to Arei Miklat, to the cities of refuge, even though that they tried to do that to the person they testified against. In other words, if they come to the Beit Din and they say, Reuben accidentally killed Shimon, which in that case he would be running to Arei Miklat, living the rest of his life until the Kohen Gadol is alive, still in the cities of refuge, and then they turned out to be falsified witnesses, Edim Zomemim. We don't say now they have to pick up and go to Arei Miklat, and that we learned from also a pasuk based on what Resh Lakish said, that in the pasuk in Arei Miklat it says, Hu Yanus, he will run, only he, but not the witnesses that they tried to falsify a dut and send somebody to Arei Miklat. So that's the Mishnah. Then in the Gemara we started discussing the two additional cases that a person would also not be punished the same way. The first case was if a person testifies that someone's oxen, someone's cow killed someone. We mentioned the backdrop to this, that if you have a shor mu'ad, if you have an ox that has been warned and has gored 3 times already, so that's a shor mu'ad. It's a walking danger, and it's upon the owner to carefully watch it, and he didn't. If that ox kills someone, hashori sakel, we stone, we kill the ox. V'gam be'alav yumat, and also the owner will get mitat b'dei shamayim. Ve'im kofer yushat alav. Listen to this language because we're going to be dealing with this language right now. Ve'im kofer yushat alav. If they place a kofer, a redemption money, on the owner of the ox, he will pay. That means he has to also pay money for kofer, right? Now, what is kofer and how much money is the debate. Why does that have to do with Masechet Makkot? I'll just jump the gun and then we'll read it through. Because if the nature of this money that he pays is payment, just like if I break your window, I have to pay the damage. If it's damages, so of course, if I try to make you pay by falsified edut, by a testimony that is sheker, then I have to pay you when I try to make you pay them. But if this money, the nature of it is not damages, but it is knas, it is my, not knas, but it is my atonement. It's my part of my tshuva. Just so we mentioned right now, the Baalim, the owner of the oxen, is chayav mitabi de shamayim. He gets a heavenly death penalty, right? So part of my tshuva maybe is I have to pay kofir, from the language of kapara. This redemption money, the kofir, which the pasuk says, right? Kofir yushat alav. If you put a money as kofir, maybe kofir means kapara. It's part of my atonement, part of my kapara. If it's kapara, then it's only applicable to me. It's not applicable to them. So even though that they tried to make me pay with falsify testimony, still they don't pay that money because it's only related to the person that has kapara, not a monetary payment of damages. That's the debate over here. Now, says the Gemara.
What's the fourth case?
Sorry? We didn't get there yet. We got to, and Braita said it. The fourth, we got to deal with it today. The fourth case is that they're not sold as eved, right? When somebody steals, if he doesn't have money to pay, what happens? He's sold as an eved, as a payment of that money that he should have paid when he stole, and now he has to return the money. We get to. So says the Gemara. There was a machloket between Rabbanan and Rabbi Yishmael ben Osher and Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. What is exactly this payment that he pays? Is it demei mazik or is it demei nizak? What are you paying exactly? Do you pay when your ox killed somebody? Let's imagine if your ox killed Reuben, do you pay what Reuben would be worth to Reuben's family? That's demei nizak. The value of the damaged person, the killed person, or the memazik, or do I pay the family of Reuben what I am worth? So the Gemara suggested, if you say that's the menizak, which is Rabbi Yishmael ben Rosh and Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, that holds that you have to pay Reuben's worth, then the Gemara suggested perhaps Rabbi Yishmael holds that you have to pay this money, and the nature of the money is damages. You damaged Reuben, you killed him, you have to pay his worth. It's like almost like the money of the broken glass, you pay the worth of the glass to the owner, you damaged him. But if you say, I'm paying my worth to Reuben's family, then it's why was my worth? Because I should be killed. Mitabi de shamayim. Because of this, so it's my worth I'm doing as a kapara, as atonement. That's the suggestion. It's very sweet, makes it very sensible, very sensible. So says the Gemara, take a look 12 lines up. My tamayu de Rabbanan. Ne'emar, why do Rabbanan hold that you pay demei mazik? Right? So says the Gemara, the menizak. Says the Gemara, Nemar lehalan, Nemar hashata lemala, v'nemar hashata lemata. There are two times that the pasuk says yushat alav. This language, this verbiage of a payment being placed on someone. What's the other case? The other case is if two people are fighting, a pregnant woman, the wife of one of them, comes to separate them, and there you go, a punch into the stomach, and she miscarried the baby. So the person who punched her and caused the death of the fetus has to pay the worth of that child, right? It means if you have the IVF, the third time IVF, $45,000, $60,000, whatever it is, yeah, that's the worth of that child, right? If you had like a regular thing, it would be different. So you have to pay demei, over there would be demei nizak. So says the Gemara, they compare the two verbiages of Yushat Alav, of the payment being placed on a person who killed someone, and says the Gemara, Ma lehalan, just like by the case of payment of the fetus, but the nizak is the worth of the nizak, of the damaged, afkan, but the nizak here also is going to be the worth of the damaged person, which is the person that was killed. And Rabbi Ishmael, beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, says, no, v'natan pidyon nafsho ketiv. Over here is different. I hear the comparison of Yushat Alav, but over here it clearly says, pidyon nafsho, the redemption of his nefesh. Whose nefesh? The owner of the ox. So therefore you can't start with comparisons of verbiages in different psukim, but it says clearly black and white, it is my kofir, it is my redemption, it's my atonement. So it says, the Gemara, Rabbanan don't disagree with him on that. They also read the pasuk to mean kofer nafsho, that means he's a redemption of his nefesh. It's the process is for his kapara. Rabbanan agree with that. In pidyon nafsho ketiv, yes, we agree. It says pidyon nafsho, but mihu ki shaiminan b'denizak shaiminan. But what's the dollar amount of that kapara for me? The dollar amount is the worth of the nizak, the worth of the person that was killed by my oxen, and that we learn from the comparison of the verbiages with the case of the fetus, right? So that's the machloket that we have. And that concludes the third subject of when edim zomemim don't get the same punishment. If you say kofir is kapara, if you say that the money that the owner of the oxen pays is an atonement for him, that's not applicable to edim zomemim. Fourth and final case of the Braita is, well, fourth but not final, because there's Rabbi Akiva we have to discuss. Ve'enim karin be'eved. They're not sold as an eved ivri. When are you sold as an eved ivri? You're sold as an eved ivri, as a Jewish slave, when typically when you stole money, you were caught, you have to return the money you stole, you don't have money. You have no assets to pay the stolen worth of the dollar amount that you stole, and therefore the Bet Din sells the person as an eved, or he himself could sell himself as well when he doesn't have the means to live, right? A person that typically nowadays would become homeless, back in the day, you would say, okay, I'm not making it. So for the meanwhile, until my head is above the water, I'm going to go work for somebody as an eved ivri until things are better. And you could sell himself. So either sold by Bet Din or sold by himself. So says the Gemara, if they try to get him sold, that means we're talking about the first scenario. They come to Bet Din, they say, this guy stole $1 million. You know this whole news that somebody broke into Rothschild's thing and stole $1 million. It was this guy. We saw it. No, he doesn't have $1 million. It's going to be sold as an eved, right? So they tried to get him sold as an eved, and now two other people came and said, well, you cannot have been there because you were in Florida with us, so you cannot have witnessed him stealing from Rothschild. So what happens then? Do we say, okay, let's sell these two guys as avadim? They wanted to make him sold to someone as an eved. Should be done to them. Kasher zabab la'asod la'achiv. The halacha is no. We don't do that. Why? Why not? Says the Gemara. Let's take a look. Savar Rav Hamnuna remember. Rav Hamnuna originally wanted to say that this halacha, that you don't apply the same to the witnesses, the falsified witnesses, and you don't sell them, is only in a sliver of a case that they do, that this guy that they are trying to accuse is a rich man. So this man that they say went to the Rothschild and stole has the $1 million in his account. So if the Edim Zomemim would not become Zomemim, if the second set of Edim would not show up, and the Bedim would say, you're chayav to pay $1 million, he would write a check $1 million, and he would never be sold as an Eved. So therefore, turns out, says Rab Hamnuna, that the first group of Edim would not get him sold. So therefore, because they would not be able to get him sold, they also not going to be sold to Avadim, even if they don't have money, right? That's what Rab Hamnuna wanted to say. The migu, because since the ihu lo nistabin, he would not have been sold as an eved because he's rich and he would just pay from pocket. In hunami lo mistabinu. They, the edim zomemim, also would not be sold as avadim. But in a scenario that the accused individual did not have the money, would not have the money to pay, even though that they have the money, they're rich. Misdabinu, Rav Hamnuna said, in that case, we would say, they would want to write the $1 million check. We would say, sorry, keep your money for yourself. You're going to be sold as an Eved. Roll your sleeves up, right? That's what the Gemara says. That's the Rav Hamnuna. The Gemara asks, he says, wait a second. Why can't they just say to him, the Edim Zomemim should say, and havalach mi hava mizdabnat. He said, it's a technical problem. You don't have money, and that's why you would be sold. If you had money, you would pay the money. So we're not trying to get you to go to Galut, we're trying to get you to pay. The problem is, you have a technical problem, you don't have money. We do. So you have to do to us what we wanted to do to you. We wanted to make you pay. The technical problem is not our problem, right? We should not be sold. We write the check, the $1 million, you're good to go. So therefore, the Gemara rejects this. Ela sava Rav Hamnuna. You know what really was said by Rav Hamnuna is the following. He thought to say, Ela sava Rav Hamnuna lememar. Hanemili, hecha deitle oledide oledidu. This case that the Edim Zomemim don't end up being sold as Avadim is in one of two cases. Either the accused person has the money, even if they don't have the money, even if the Edim Zomemim don't have the money, or if the accused person doesn't have the money, but they have the money. If one of the two is rich, the Edim Zomemim don't end up going to Galut. For a very simple reason, says Rav Hamnuna. Because if he has the money, it turns out that they never tried to get him sold because he would just pay. And if he doesn't have the money, they have the money, then still they don't go out to be sold because they would say, well, it's your problem you don't have the money. We have. So we just got to write the check. So in any of those two cases, if anyone is rich, the Edim Zomemim don't end up going to be sold as Avadim. But if none of them has the money, says the Gemara, Aval hecha delet le lo ledide velo ledidu. He doesn't have the money. They don't have the money, says the Gemara, mizdabnu. Then they will be sold. So this is what Rav Hamnuna wanted to say. Now Rava is going to scrutinize this idea of Rav Hamnuna. It's going to be a machloket between Rav Hamnuna and Rava. Rav Hamnuna says, okay, I hear what you're saying, but listen to what I have to say. Amar le Rava. Rava says to him, V'nimkar begnevato amar Rachmana. You remember how we said in the beginning of the Gemara 2 days ago, in the first case of the Mishnah, that because the Pasuk says, Asitem lo, you only do it to him. You remember that? Here Rava says the same thing. He says, you didn't read the Pasuk carefully, Rav Hamnuna, with all due respect. But the Pasuk says, Nimkar, help me out. Bignevato, he will be sold because of his theft. Because he stole. Why do you have to say Bignevato? Just say Bigneva. The Pasuk is clearly coming to tell you, only a person that stole is going to be sold. Nobody else is going to be sold because of him. And it's coming to exactly exclude our case of edim zomemim that tried to get someone sold as an eved, bignevato velo bigneva, of a case of edim zomemim, says Rava. Amar Rachmana bignevato velo bizmamo, not because he tried to get someone sold for a theft accusation. Fine. Says the Gemara, final case, the fifth case. Right, we had 4 cases, and then we had Rabbi Akiva.
So Rava is saying that any time there's a monetary, there's never just
Case of Geneva, not monetary. No, monetary, of course they pay. If they say that you borrowed money, right, and you never paid, then they will pay. But here's a specific Izrata Katuv b'Genevato velo bizmamo. Says 3 lines up. Mishum Rabbi Akiva Amru. You remember the 5th case was Rabbi Akiva said that you also don't pay what? Help me out. Anyone remembers? What was the case of Rabbi Akiva? What was Rabbi Akiva? No, guys, look up. Tan Rabbanan, the second wide line. Dalet Devarim Ne'emru Be'edim. We went through all the 4, and then 4th wide line, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Af en meshalemin al pi atzman. They also don't pay based on their own admission, right? Which means what? Let me give you the background. These are, by the way, in this one page, we have gone through so many fundamental halachot of Sanhedrin. You don't realize each one of these things is a sugya by itself that pops up multiple places in Shas. So it's very kedai. You're getting like the wealth of sugyas that are Shas sugyas. So this is one of Shas sugyas. That a person that admits his knas does not pay. In other words, if you become obligated, if you have an obligation on you, a monetary obligation, which is not a payment of damages, but is a fine, it's a knas from the Torah, if you admit it, you're patur. Right? And we learned this in Gemara in Masechet Baba Kama, the Samech Dalet, on page 64, Asher Yarshi'un HaElohim, that the judges, the Dayanim, would paskin on him, prat lemarshia et atzmo, says the Gemara. It's excluding a case that a person made himself vulnerable, and he said, I'm rasha, I'm admitting it. And in that case, he will be patur. Now, let's set the record straight. If you go to Bedin, and you say in front of the Dayanim, I owe $1 million to Reuben. What's the halacha? You owe $1 million to Reuben, even if you really didn't. Because Hoda'at Ba'al Kemea Edim Dami. Admission of the owners, of the Ba'al Din, of the person in question, is like 100 Edim. This question in the Ktsot is discussed in Choshen Mishpat, in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Lamed Dalet, Seif Dalet, in the Ktsot there, what exactly the lamdut of this is, what exactly the mechanism of this is, how it works. Is it ne'emanut? Is it hitchayvut? But it's the halacha. If you say I owe you money, you owe me money.
Even if Reuven says you don't owe me money?
If you go and say I owe Dr. Shea $100, you owe him. Right? But that's only for owing money. If it's knas, for instance, the case of the Torah, if a person steals, right, and he's caught, then he has to pay kefel. Why? Why would you pay more than what you stole? The second payment is knas, is a fine placed on him by the Torah. So if someone is caught and now he realizes the circumstance, he runs to the Bedin and says, I stole, before they judge him, before they take him to Bedin, and Asher Yarshi'una Elohim, that means they have to paskin. Before he stands trial, he runs to Bedin and says, I, Reuben, stole from Shimon, and I am admitting it. Then what happens? Then he only pays, and he becomes patur from the second payment. From Knas, he becomes Patur. That's the backdrop of this. So now let's learn. Says the Gemara, My Tama de Rabbi Akiva. Why does Rabbi Akiva say that Edim Zomemim don't pay Al Pi Atzmam? That means, well, let me tell you what the case is. Case is, the second group of Edim come and say, you guys are lying because you could not have witnessed it. You were with us in France. You remember that case, right? So now, the first group of Edim are smart. They realize what's happening. Right now, what happened? Right now, as the second group came and testified, the guy that was accused is off the hook. That's what happened now. The next step is the Beit Din is going to have a session, judging this first group and paskening on them. So if they're smart, beforehand, they run to a second Beit Din, says Rashi, it's a question why it needs to be a second Beit Din, could be even the same Beit Din. And they go to the second Beit Din and they say, we lied in our testimony, we became Edim Zomemim. We're saying it to you straight as it is. So says Rabbi Akiva, En Meshalemim. They don't pay in that scenario. Why? Says the Gemara, why in the world would you not pay? My Tama Rabbi Akiva, why? Says the Gemara, Kasavar, Kenasahu. Rabbi Akiva holds that the payment of Edim Zomemim is Kenas. How do I know it's Kenas? The Kenas en Meshalem al Pi Atzmo. As we explained in past 2-3 minutes, a Kenas, a person does not pay when they admit the guilt before the din is paskind. Amar Rabba says, I'll prove to you that the payment of Edim Zomemim is Kenas. Why? Because Lo Asu Maaseh V'ne'eragim. Because where do you find in the entire Torah that someone has not done anything, hasn't accomplished, hasn't killed anyone, and he gets killed? Hasn't made the guy pay and he pays. Damages is only after the damage is due. Here the damage is not due. And still they pay. So that's Kenas. Amar Rav Nachman says, I also prove to you it's Kenas. Teda, you should know. Sha'arei mamon b'yad ba'alim. Even in the case that the accused person has not paid yet, his money is still sitting in his wallet, still meshalemim, they still pay. The Gemara says, wait a second, that's the same thing as the previous, right? Ma'inihu. Says the Gemara, what is that? The top line. Basically, Rav Nachman is saying the same thing as Rabbah. The Gemara says, yes, it is. Ema v'chen amar Rav Nachman. And Rav Nachman said the same proof. Basically, the proof is, you see from Edim Zomemim that even before they accomplish something, before any punishment is done to the accused individual, they get punished. You don't find this anywhere in the Torah. The only logic that would stand is that this is Kenas. The Torah said, you tried to do this, bah, Kenas. It's not a payment because the guy didn't end up paying, right? Machshava ra'a ela kadosh baruch hu mesarfa lemaaseh. In negativity, Hashem, until the negativity is done, usually we don't punish anyone unless it's a Kenas. So says Rabbi Akiva, because it's Kenas, if they run to the second Beit Din and they admit guilt, it becomes like any Kenas in the Torah. Asher yarshiuna Elohim, and the Gemara in Samech Dalet in Masechet Bava Kama says, Prat lemarshia et atzmo. If you go and admit it yourself, you're off the hook. Right? Says the Gemara. Amar, let's finish this until the Mishnah. I know we're out of time, but let's at least attempt. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Et zomem meshalem lefi chelko. Et zomem pays based on his chelek. What is the chelek of et zomem? My meshalem lefi. What do you mean meshalem lefi chelko? If you say that they wanted to make the accused person pay $1,000, and now that they became Edim Zomemim, they collectively have to pay $1,000, right? So it will be 500 this Ed and 500 his friend. If you say that's the case, Tanina, that's exactly said in our Mishnah, right? Meshaleshin b'mamon, that's Taf Hey. Later on we have this as a Mishnah. Meshaleshin b'mamon ve'meshaleshin b'malkud. That if you are becoming et zomem, if you are proven to be et zomem, you divide the money. If you're 3 edim and they all become zomem, then for mamon they divide it to 3. If they try to get the guy to pay $300, then each one of the edim pays 100, right? Ve'en meshalashim b'malkut. But we don't say, well, collectively they have to get 39 lashes. So each one will get 13. Doesn't work like that. Each one of them observes the full 39 lashes, right? That's a Mishnah. So we know that already. So therefore, that's not the case. The case is, kegon, the itzum chad minayhu. We're talking about the case that only one of the edim became zomemim. In other words, they said, Reuben killed Shimon, we saw it. And then a second group of edim come and say, we don't know about you, but you were with us. One of you were with us in France. The other guy may be saying the truth, but you were not there. You were with us. So one of the edim became zomem. In that case, he pays half. Maybe that's what he means. Maybe. Says the Gemara, no, it can't be. That can't be the case. The meshalem palgadide. Umi meshalem. Gemara says, is that true? In that case, we don't pay edim zomemim at all. Vehatanya, we learned in the Braita. And Edzo, this is another fundamental halacha in Hilchot Edim Zomemim. You ready? Ein edzomem meshalem mamon ad sheyazumu shenehem. An edzomem does not pay a penny until him and his friend together become edim zomemim. So you can't make one of the two zomem. You can't. Doesn't work. So now it becomes very questionable exactly how this make any sense is the question. Bezrat Hashem, well, I wanted to finish the Mishnah, but Bezrat Hashem will continue this in the next shiur. Baruch.
Also